Welcome back, and it's really exciting for me to be able to present something a little bit different than perhaps the libraries, the widgets, or the apps that I might have talked about in the past. Like I said before, I've been blown away by the creativity and the achievements of the software that people have created. And it led me to think, are there other areas that we could be working on a little bit harder? And so I started to think about operating systems and the benefits or not of those that existed. And so I'm going to talk to you today about FyshOS, which is what I think a great developer experience. I call it on this title slide, and apologies for the cheesy joke, a well-rounded developer experience. You can tell me whether that's truly right or not, but we added rounded corners, if I didn't mention it earlier today, in a recent release. So there you go. It's already well-rounded. The question might be that you would have perhaps on your lips, another operating system? Really? Well, I mean that is a fair question. Why would we need another operating system? And I mean, yeah, maybe we don't, but there's a few reasons why I thought this would be quite useful or interesting as a project. We're building everything platform agnostic, which is great. These applications that we create are going to work on any device, but then we're stuck with a specific platform that's designed for other purposes. I might not have the same idea about what makes a good developer experience as a typical customer of Microsoft or Apple, for example. Also, one of the reasons a new toolkit is nice and refreshing is it doesn't carry with it the weight of legacy. And I think we could probably agree most operating systems do, and to some extent the user interfaces as well. So can we look at that? Can we make a great experience that's good for users and is good for developers instead of focusing on just one or the other? And can it adapt really well to the plethora of different devices that we have in a modern ecosystem, from the phenomenally high-powered, ultra-high density screens that you might have, interestingly, on like a studio display or in your hand, down to cheaper devices that might be embedded. They might just be older pieces of equipment that folk want to work with. And can it work beautifully with all of the modern tools instead of having to work with older technologies? And much like Fyne, can we promote good development techniques, learning, and lower the barrier to entry to creating a desktop operating system? That is the challenge, I suppose. The ambition, slightly cheesily characterized, is to bring back fun to desktop and to cross-platform development. So then FyshOS was born. It is powerful and extensible. I hope those colors are really popping on any screens that are watching on the presentation. It's a little bit washed out, but I have some other ones to show shortly. It is built on the Debian Linux system. It's a stable release, so it's really solid, very well tested, and quite widely used. It's a great solid base. Everything that you see on screen, however, has got nothing to do with the low level, the underlying operating system. It is all Go. It is all built with Fyne, and everything that you see on screen there is a Fyne application of some sort. You might recognize, for the observant there, blue and orange is not normally the way that a Fyne app would be presented, but we have a global theme that fits the character of something that's just a little bit cheekier, a little bit different, but it is possible in extensible manner for you to decide what the desktop theme should be. This is completely customizable for your experience. Fyne Desk is the desktop application that's running the windowing, the sidebars, the panels. I'll talk more about that. It's a really cool project that's been around quite some time and similarly had lots of great contributions over the years. And Finn, the Fyne login manager, we'll see a little bit more of. We're able to distribute a lot of this through the standard apps system, and so we don't have to have one single system. We can have many, many small applications, and because of the low overhead to run Fyne-based applications, it doesn't really matter that they're not all part of the same binary. It's just going to work beautifully and fast. And modules provide the extensibility at the desktop level that anybody could get their code into the desktop quite easily. It does come in a light version as well. I just happen to only be displaying a static screenshot at the moment. And it will adapt to high DPI and to appropriate settings that users might have set up previously for higher contrast or larger text, those sorts of things. So that is what it looks like when you're running something. It's powerful, it's got all of the goodies going on, but it's also important that it is friendly, that it comes across as simple for anybody who's been in API design for any amount of time knows simplicity is tough, and at the user interface it is even harder. So what can we do to make this a little bit friendlier? Well, firstly, we can animate my little friend on screen. So he will bubble away as your system is loading, and you'll have a nice and simple login manager there. Other photos are available, better ones that might characterize yourself a little bit finer as well. So it's a friendly first boot type of experience. And like I said, the applications that form part of this are all distributed with the app listing platform that we have available. You might not know this, in fact, why would you? But the apps.fyne.io website has an API behind it. So the apps manager application is able to connect to it and discover what has been published. As we're built on Linux and we're very friendly with the idea of everything should be open source to improve learning, it's important that all of these applications are. So why not go to the biggest source of open source Fyne-based applications that exist? The app manager would, as you expect, help you to install, upgrade, uninstall your software, keep it up to date, and manage what's on your system. For people who are interested in having this experience for their own purposes, if you were looking to have a custom platform for your staff or for customers for some reason, we could whitelist or provide a custom app feed of the software that can be installed. So you're able to not just have the list of open source, but you could have your Office suite or your 5 applications or whatever version of here's what's acceptable in our organization. And because all of this is open and based on a customizable boot system that Debian has provided, it's possible to load that same application list into the construction of the installer itself. So when you install the system, it comes with your company or your set of open source software from that same source. I mentioned the theme. That is the theme. It's not, sorry. This is system-wide, but the user can also define what they would like to do. We've made use of the fact that Fyne understands a global theme file. It's stored in that JSON file, if anybody's interested in playing around. By default, it doesn't exist. The UI that you see is out of the box. But you can work on this to do whatever you would like. It's a standard format that the library understands for various reasons, but one of them is so that you can have a global theme that is not actually the theme that's shipped either by the library or by people that build applications. So unless their app says, I must have a different theme, it will use or delegate to this global theme that you've defined. The JSON file illustrated there is not comprehensive. If you just display white foreground color on all platforms and then some nice colors on light with one of the sizes changed, you might not have the most excellent experience. It's just there to demonstrate that you can have colors, sizes, fonts, icons, like you would with the theme API, and we can specify them based on the variant, which is currently light or dark. For coders in the room who just want to be coding their own stuff onto the desktop but haven't learned how or haven't managed to do this with previous systems, the module API for FyneDesk is to run a function that returns a canvas object. And as we've seen earlier, that's a generic description for anything that can be displayed on screen. So I have 3 main module definitions: the status area, the screen area, and a launch suggestion. And the last one is a little different. But the status area, you can see On the top image, or the one on the right-hand side, any piece of application can contribute to that area. Those two images are the same modules loaded, but they can respond differently to whether the bar is in a wide format or a narrow format. So as you can see, they might hide detail, or they might orient themselves differently. And the screen area module is something that fills the gap between all of the stuff displayed at the borders. So that text file is a simple illustration of I can put files on my desktop background if I want by saying I have a screen area module and it returns a file listing for the desktop directory. Very few lines of code to add some functionality like that. And the launch suggested, which is a bit harder to illustrate, returns for a given user search string, which things you could suggest launching. And so I could show you later, you are able to launch applications, run queries, open browser windows and things like that from that launch. And the modules displayed in the status area understand it. So you could type for volume up or to connect to a different wireless network, for example. So that is essentially the front end to an operating system that I think could create a better development experience. It's friendly, it's easy to understand, but it is still quite based on code. And so I wanted to introduce something new today that can help reduce the barrier to entry for all of these things that I've already discussed. And this is called Fysion, or rather Fysion Micro, which is a small version of a visual app builder product. You can modify your application, and things like drag and drop and nicenesses will be a key part of that soon. It allows you to edit themes, layouts, containers, widget properties, all live in a user interface that is completely separated from the code for people who don't want to get into it. And this is an application built on top of Fyne, much like everything else. It is going to be able to run on anywhere, but it creates applications that can run on anything as well. So this is going to compile native applications. You can install them onto your system, and you can run this software anywhere as well. Of course, FyshOS is the best place to run it. It is focused on editing the applications on your platform and installing them to work on it. It can be capable of delivering them to any platform with appropriate upgrade to use a back-end infrastructure for deploying cross-platform applications, which you can read more about at one of FyneLab's websites. We are currently working with early testers at the moment on this product individually, as well as in the FyshOS product at fysion.app is where you can find out more. It is an open source piece of software, at least Fysion Micro is, which I'm going to show. And it is built around this design concepts, which we're trying to deliver on, where you can load an application, configure it in terms of how it looks, how it behaves, but also you're only a little bit separated from the code at any time, so people can understand what's happening, dip into the code, and learn application development at the same time. So instead of being a no-code solution, we're trying to help people get into software through low code. You start with nothing too scary, and then you can dig into the details, whether it's a button callback, or actually that's a piece of developer code I want to look into. So as well as the graphical concepts, there are IDE concepts and file handling, more traditional things that you can get into. So because I am a little bit glutton for punishment, or I just want to tempt the demo gods, I'm going to try a live demo of what we have in place. So if I switch away from there, I'm going to launch this OS. Let me try and get that over here and maximize that. And oh, we have our little friend on the boot screen as well. Doesn't usually show for that long, I just needed to hold back while the VM booted. So we've got our little animation there, and we are landing onto the login screen that I demonstrated. And yeah, that's it loaded. So we have the bars that I was mentioning before. These are pretty straightforward little bits of fine code that are contributing to these modules, and equivalent of some kind of start menu launcher is available there. The more keyboard launcher that I mentioned you can contribute to through modules is this UI here. If I want to launch a hello application, just type hello. I mean, it's a standard concept, but if you wanted to type in equations or URLs, it would know the right thing to do there. But that's not really the thing I wanted to show you. This hello application, it's also in my sidebar up here. I can launch that by tapping on it. But I can also go here and I can say I want to edit this application. Now bear in mind, this is a binary on the system. So native application is something that's been installed through an app manager. An app manager, much like this one in fact. So that, if anybody's familiar with the list of applications that we have on the website, you might recognize some of these names. Some classics. Quite enjoy myself a little bit of Minesweeper or FineSweeper. So I could tap to install that application. And at the moment, a lot of this is being built from source on the fly. So some of these operations aren't super fast, but I can just leave that going there for a minute. And I'll jump back over to here. So this is a current version of this Fysion Micro that I was mentioning. I've loaded the hello application. You probably recognize the icon matches. We have some app metadata over here, which anybody who was on the talk for metadata earlier might recognize. But I also have this user interface file, which is a welcome label and a button. Pretty straightforward concept here. But if I just felt, well, I'm an expert in writing hello applications, and I use them a lot on my desktop, and in fact, I know that it's important to greet the people at an organization instead of providing a generic greeting. So I know Fyne Conf. I don't know if I was writing backwards, if my keyboard's flipped, but that was challenging. So my label here is going to greet people at FyneConf. Sure, I mean, we've seen this data binding we saw earlier. The diagram widget has done similar things. It's nice to have your data synchronized, but what does that really mean? Well, for us, it means we've just made an update to our application. So what I would want to do next is to install this new version of my software. Did I tap that? Oh, we did get our little app installed. Though. Can go and play that in a minute. And I launch my Hello World application. And this is still loading the binary on the system. This is a native compiled application, but it is brand new. And I have done that through the magic of graphical editing of applications. There may have been a little glitch there, I don't know if you noticed, but nonetheless, that's what it's set up to do so that people can get in, interact with the applications on their system, make updates, do the learning, and contribute a better version of what they had installed. I'm not going to try and tempt this too much further, but if, for example, I knew how to improve a calculator, I could load my calculator application. Probably looks familiar for anybody who's seen one of our demos. And this button here, well, it's a clear button. It does something quite destructive. Well, I know that should be actually a bit of a warning. So, well, maybe danger. This is a danger button. So let's make sure that's clear to the user. And whilst I'm here, I know that all clear is the word that they would use on calculators. So we need AC to represent what's going to destructively happen to the calculation ongoing. So we could therefore make those changes, install the latest version onto our system, and there you go, you have a better calculator than you did before. And you can tell your friends or just keep it to yourself because you have now a newer application than anyone else. And while we're here, you could of course use that little Minesweeper game that we installed off the App Store whilst we were here. I don't think I need anybody to see how bad I am at this game, but if I tap that, then we can move on. So there we have the features and functionality of FyshOS, which I think is shaping up to be a pretty good experience for learning how to develop pieces of software on the desktop. And an application didn't close. I'm going to just let that be upset about it and come back to the presentation. Completely flawless. Where to go next? I mean, what else can we do? It's all there. But actually, there's a lot planned ahead. The installer that I mentioned that could be customized to bring software that you want, it is, it's a complex thing, formatting hard drives and configuring bootloaders. That's one of the things that we haven't actually replaced and is a little bit less friendly than it should be. And it should also be available to run on a wider variety of platforms than we currently have available. We need to build out the complete suite of programs. So I showed just a couple. But there's lots that we can do there to make a more complete system built entirely in this way. And I think we also need a more complete system control panel so that we can have a friendly, easy to understand experience, even if you're doing complicated things at the system level. But if you're interested, please do consider getting involved. The entire thing is open source from bootloader all the way through to the applications that I've displayed, and you can find out more at that URL. That's where the source code for everything apart from the Fysion app is hosted. You can download a bootable ISO and try it out on a virtual machine, perhaps rather than on your hard drive, but it would be good to get feedback. If you're interested in helping flesh out this, it would be great to get some help coding these things up. We currently have login, file manager, text editor. There's modules that come together to make some of the applications, and a really early movie player, which actually has been made to look inadequate compared to some amazing community contributions in the last few weeks, but more on that later. But moreover, design ideas, feedback on what we've done. How can it be easier? How can it be better for a learning experience? There are various backgrounds, themes out there, but we're looking for more suggestions and contributions in the area so it can be really well polished. And do please join the FyshOS chat, which I think exists on the Gopher Slack server and the Fyne Discord server. I'm sitting in there and waiting for really interesting conversations about what we can do next. And do please consider joining us over there and being part of what I think is a pretty cool way to get people into coding some more complex and complete applications and knowing that everything you see day to day is completely editable. Thanks so much for your time.